You know, this thing has got a lot of power. Well, I guess torque is what it has, really. Because, boy, just a little bit of gas and it pulls right away. Let's open the, there's your exhaust cutout.
It's like Jake brakes.
Yeah, yeah. Welcome to another episode of Jay Leno's Garage. Once again, we're being visited by automotive royalty from the Nethercutt Museum right up the street here in Sylmar, California. This is a 1923 McFarlan Knickerbocker Cabriolet 154. How rare is it? I've never seen one before. This was a car that was one of the most expensive cars, well, in the world back in the day. The McFarlan was a small company. They used to make carriages and horse-drawn coaches and all that type of thing. Then they got into the automobile business very early, and they decided they weren't going to build the Model T or any people's car. They went the most expensive route. This thing has an enormous engine for the period, 120 horsepower, 18 spark plugs, 4 valves per cylinder, but not overhead camera or anything like that. Just a T-head, but 4 valves per cylinder. See, T-heads were popular because gas was not very good. The octane was very low. And with a T-head means you have the piston in the middle and you have the valves on the side out here. And the cars would run cooler because there's a lot more space for the water to go around and keep the valves cool, so consequently it didn't detonate. So that's why T-heads were used, because cars had 45, 50, 60 octane. But let's bring in Cameron Richards. He's the vice president of Nethercutt. Thanks for coming by. This is about as rare as it gets. I mean, this is unbelievable, this thing. This was owned by Fatty Arbuckle, the famous comedian of the period. And it's just decked out. We'll show you the interior in a minute, but it's just incredible. And not many, I don't think this is the only one that's surviving, isn't it, of the Knickerbockers?
It's the only one that I've ever found anything on the internet or any archives at all. So led to believe this is the only one left, or maybe even built at all.
Yeah, this is built, I believe, in Connersville, Indiana, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, because Indiana once rivaled Detroit. That was going to be the other Detroit, you know, because you had Duesenberg, you had Cord,
right.
You had Auburn rather. Just so many manufacturers, and of course the Indianapolis 500, the fame associated with that. What was the equivalent? 15,000, 10, 12, 15,000, something like that, in 1923?
I think it was even more than that.
Yeah.
They really went after the luxury car market, which is interesting because McFarlan's actually, when they started getting in from carriages to automotive, they started in racing. Right. But eventually led to these, so they were referred to as the American Rolls-Royce.
Right.
However many. And
I remember, I think McFarlan's, they finished the Indy 500. I think they came in like 3rd, 4th, 5th, something like that. Quite an honorable showing for the period. Because they weren't building race cars, they're just building cars that they raced, you know?
Right.
Because they had no real experience, so they were making carriages, and hey, let's get in the car business, you know? And at the height of their production, they never built more than 1 car a day. It was like, take it easy, you know, steady as she goes and all of that. And this is an enormous car. It must weigh 5,000 pounds?
Yeah, 5,200 pounds.
5,200
we weighed
pounds.
it
Okay.
years ago.
Does that have brakes in the front?
It does, and
yeah, okay.
It definitely needs them.
Yeah. Well, so many cars are still 2-wheel brakes back in the period. A Knickerbocker, I don't know what that means. Is that just what they called it, or is that a particular type of town car?
Not really sure on the name. Knickerbocker Cabriolet, it's always one of those like tongue twisters.
You know, the interesting thing about these cars was, the thing that made them different from most cars was, they had to be bulletproof. They had to run and start under every circumstance. And this car has 18 spark plugs. So the idea, just hoping one of those sparks will kick off and get the thing running. Because, you know, you had the hand crank cars, and to have a car with an enormous electric starter, you press the button, and it's you send 18 sparks out. Hopefully one will kick, boom, and then the thing runs, you know. And they always ran pretty good, and they ran pretty quiet, too, as I remember. Is it 3-speed or 4-speed?
It's a
3-speed, okay.
H pattern. And it does actually have a crank on the front as well, just in case all the spark plugs and the magnetos don't work.
Well, the crank is really there more for timing.
Okay.
You know, you want to cut top dead center, pull it, you'll miss it, go around again, pull, you know. So that's they kept the crank in the same way that motorcycles kept the Kickstarter long after the electric starter became prevalent because
Gotcha.
in case it didn't start, you want to have something you had to do.
Right.
You know, if you could crank this over by hand, you're a better man than I was. This is a big engine to crank over. It's 592 cubic inches, something like that.
572.
572 cubic. Okay. So I mean, that's a lot of it's a lot. That's a lot to turn over. But boy, it's just a beautiful car. It's just amazing. The quality just oozes out of this thing. And this is what they used to call a town car. You know, the chauffeur would be out there fighting the wind and the rain, and, you know, the owners in the back barking orders through the little horn there, and then you'd hear it in the front.
Right in the right ear.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
At least they had the decency to put these little tabs up here where you could actually add a tarp for.
There was no side window. Does the side window fit in?
No,
here?
no windows.
No side window.
Just a little rubber tarp on the top. That's all you get.
It's a rubber tarp on the. Let's open the engine. Let's show people what we're talking about. It looks like a spark plug factory. Look at that. Yeah, nothing like work on this. You hit that with your elbow, it hits you in the head.
Oh, yeah.
They built their own motors. Just look at all the spark plug. Look at the ignition system on this thing. It's pretty amazing. I guess it's a magneto with a battery and coil. So you'd start it on battery and coil, send sparks to all 18 plugs. One would catch, then you'd switch it over to magneto. Magnetos are great when they're spinning fast. The faster a magneto spins, the bigger the spark. That's why people liked them back in the day. But starting was always tough with the magneto. So you combined it with the battery and coil, so it sent a thick electrical spark through the wire, fires it off, then you switch over to magneto, and then you're out of the electrical system of the car now. The magneto is running it. So even if your electrical system fails, the magneto will keep you going. And you have an auto vac rather than a fuel pump. There's no electric. Maybe does this have an electric fuel pump aftermarket, or is it?
Not aftermarket.
No,
this just came back from Pebble, so everything right now is period correct.
Okay, as it was back in the day, yeah.
And the engine bays, I think they're beautiful.
Yeah.
They kind of remind me a lot of the early Hispano Suiza engine bays, minus the brass, of course. And I really get a kick out of the firing order that's engraved into the engine block.
With the big McFarlan. There's your horn right there. Okay, we can close that up. I never quite understood what the McFarlan logo is. As you can see it on the radiator cap, it's a guy holding a ball over his head. Is that supposed to be the world, I guess? He's got the world on his shoulders.
Yeah, it's...
I'm having to pay for this thing.
Yeah, it's an interesting marketing tool. I guess it's definitely unique.
And it does look like a Rolls-Royce radiator. I'm surprised there wasn't any lawsuit infringement there. But, because it does look like a Rolls-Royce radiator, but... just the amount of chrome and nickel. I guess that's nickel, isn't it? There really wasn't no chrome.
That is nickel, yes.
Yeah. And nickel looks much richer to me.
It does, yeah.
Chrome. But let's show them this. Oh, this is unbelievable. I gotta sit in the back of this thing. Here we go. Can I get it? Oh my God.
Comfy?
Oh, this is great. And you have a button right here that you press to signal the chauffeur. And you got curtains right here. And you got jump seats that pull out here. But you got more than enough leg room. Oh my God.
Yeah, it's very spacious back there.
And beautiful little cigarette boxes here with...
yeah, there's a little handheld mirror.
Oh, a little handheld mirror.
Yeah, enough room for a fatty Arbuckle.
Yeah. I imagine these was probably all built to order, these things. I don't think they had any floor models, but...
probably not back then. Just, I think at their height, they were only making 600 cars a year.
Yeah, that sounds about right. And the interesting thing about McFarlan was they got it right the first time. You know, they were building carriages, then they built automobiles and chose to build the most expensive, powerful automobile of the day. Remember, this precedes the Duesenberg J, Model J.
That's right.
It precedes even the Hispano Suiza. Hispano Suiza was a 6-cylinder also, but I don't believe it was as powerful as this. How do you gracefully get out of one of these? I think you kind of do this, and you get on one knee. Let me see. I got a bad knee here, so
ergonomics.
Ergonomics. Yeah, here we go. And you step out here. Oh, that's not bad. That's not bad. And you got this here to keeps dirt and mud from, if you're going down the road, from throwing it on the fender here, and it gets on your clothes. Pretty impressive. But this fabric, I guess you guys had this made to match the original fabric, eh?
That's right, yep.
Yeah. Another interesting feature, since this was Fatty Arbuckle's car, and he was a movie star, there's clips here to bring out, I guess, a cover or a tarp, would you call it?
Yeah, it's like a canopy. Looks
that's
just
right.
like a picnic table.
Here, I'll show you a picture. Here's a picture of it when he had it set up. And Fatty Arbuckle would sit back here in his director's chair, and he'd have various liquid refreshments in the trunk there. So yeah, it's kind of cool.
It's really neat. It's a hit at concourses, and it's just very different. And the interior is one thing. Not a lot of people expect that when you open the back doors.
And this was called a town car, which meant it was a car where you had to go to events in town. You know, you would sit in the back and your chauffeur would drive. And you figured people probably went 40 miles an hour. That's about the top speed if you were driving around somewhere, you're leisurely taking your time, you know. And with 120 horsepower, that was huge back in the day.
Yeah, more than enough for the era.
And I'm sure it was plenty torquey. You have lights all over the place on this thing. You know, in 1923, most people didn't have electricity in their home. So to have electric lights on your car was a huge deal, you know. And of course, back in these days, headlights weren't used to light up the road. They were used to tell people on the road that a car was coming. Because you can't get probably more than 7 feet in front of that car with those beams. So the idea was just, oh, something's coming at us, let's get out of the roadway, you know.
Yeah, the lights are very big, however, they're not very powerful.
Not, like myself, big but not bright. Yeah. Well, and is it hydraulic brakes or mechanical, do you know?
I believe mechanical.
Okay.
That one I'm not sure on. I have to.
I'm guessing mechanical with a vacuum booster, which is what Packard had. I don't know if that was around in 23. That seems a little early.
She stops great.
Yeah. I like this carriage light here. That comes from the old carriage days, you know, help people get in and out. And as we said before, nothing here for the driver, except maybe on a rainy day they put a tarp over the thing there.
They're kind of left out in the elements, but.
Yeah. And I guess this works as your, oh, I see. Oh, I thought that was a tinted piece of glass, but it's not. It's just a cover, I guess, isn't it, to keep.
Yeah, the sunshade.
A sunshade, yeah. I don't know what you're really shading because you're sitting on it. Not really shading a whole lot there, but all right. Cool. And what size tires are those? 27, something like that?
A little overkill, I'd say, but it complements the rest of the body well. It's, It kind of reminds me of like a Phantom 2.
It does. It's very Rolls-Royce-like.
And that was its top competitor.
Right. I mean, Rolls-Royce was great in 1911 to about 1914. Then it was a kind of a case of workmanship over what's the word I want? Science. You know, they stayed with that design a long time.
Right.
Everybody else had moved on to overhead valves like Hispano-Suez and everybody else. So Rolls-Royce kept building the same thing until they got to the Phantom 1, 2, and the 12-cylinder. But this thing was just a big, powerful T-head car, and T-heads were very, very powerful. A lot of bottom-end torque. Well, why don't you go for a drive? I'll drive you. You can be the chauffeur guy. People go, hey, look, I don't know who that guy is, but you got Jay Leno driving it. So that's pretty good.
That must be important, yeah. Sounds good to me.
Let's see how this thing goes. All right. Boy, there is no room. They got little tiny chauffeurs back in the day. Well, this one is not as bad as some.
It's not too bad, but you'd think there'd be more room there. There we go.
Do you have one of the primer cups is open? Hear the engine?
The hissing?
Yeah. No, the ch-ch-ch.
Yeah.
One of your primer cups is open, I think.
Oh, okay.
Check and see. Open the hood. Hang on. Let's fix this. George, how do you close that? Take your hand up. Hear it? But normally you have on the side. Do you think it turns inside this, or do you think it tightens it with it?
I would think that.
Yeah, I tried to twist it.
You can shut it off. Just take it out completely. You want a rag to put around that, George?
No, these don't have any teeth. There we go. You got your wallet, sir?
Yeah, how much for labor?
Oh, you're all set. You're all set, she's paying.
All right, that should do it. Let's see.
Cool.
Start it, see if it's back.
Yeah, we just had to tighten that down, and that's. See, in cold weather, you used to put a little gas in there, turn it, put a little gas right in the cylinder, shut it, and then start it, and that would help in cold weather.
Oh,
so
very
sometimes
cool.
that screw backs off a little bit. All right, let's put the hood down. We'll get ready to go.
Alrighty.
You know, this thing has got a lot of power. Well, I guess torque is what it has, really. Because, boy, just a little bit of gas and it pulls right away. Remember, this is 1923. This is pretty old.
Man, getting driven around by Jay Leno. I could get used to this. Let's try and keep it under 100, Jay.
I love that microphone. That's great, having your boss in your ear every second of the day. That'd drive you nuts in this thing. But boy, what a torque monster. You can slow right down to 5-6 miles an hour in top gear and then just pull over with no snatch at all. I'm the second comedian to drive this car after Fatty Arbuckle. How's the ride back there, Cameron?
Yeah, it's great. Not every day that you can realize that you peaked in life.
Yeah, brakes are very good.
How's the sun feeling up there?
Yeah, you sound like that guy in Video Killed the Radio Star. Boy, I haven't put this right up there with the Silver Ghost. This is smooth, a lot of torque, a lot of power, very comfortable. Steering is a little hard, but I got a broken collarbone, so that might have something to do with it. But it feels, oh my God. I mean, I read about McFarlan and seen the name, but this is the first time I ever drove one. Actually, I think it may be the first time I ever saw one in person. So it's always amazing how something at the turn of the last century was one of the most famous cars in America, and now nobody even knows what I'm talking about. How you doing, my friend? You know, these T-heads were the most reliable engines of the period. Pierce Arrow had them in the 66, well, all the Pierce Arrows, because they're slow moving. I think 1800's probably the end of the rev range on this thing. It's probably as low as 13 or 14. But it's so smooth and so powerful. They run cool because they're not revving, so they don't make a lot of heat. Yeah, pretty amazing.
You know, considering this car's 100 years old, it rides great. Seats back then were just so much more cushioned, just like a typical couch of the era.
I was never a big fan of the town car type of situation because they're always chauffeur driven. A car like this you want to drive yourself, but it's so tight up here. People are a lot smaller in 1923 than they are now.
Big chauffeurs were such an important thing back then because most people were used to being in the back of a horse and carriage, which actually McFarlan started off as before they started building automobiles.
Now these are white wall tires. Oh my God. Anybody behind me, Cameron?
Yeah, just one. Splendid driving, Jay. Thank you.
Yeah, hop in the front.
All good?
Yeah, very good.
It is actually like, ooh, real smooth back there. Thanks for the ride.
Oh yeah,
That was pretty cool.
Comfortable back there?
Yeah, it's sweet. You gotta hop in the back.
Boy, this is a nice driving car. Smooth, powerful.
I mean, you barely feel, it's like effortless torque back there.
I know, it's amazing. And it's 23, it's pretty early.
100 years old.
Yeah, I guess that's right, it's now 100 years old. I mean, I couldn't imagine this as a two-seater roadster, you know?
Oh, yeah.
With all kinds of room. Let's open the, there's your exhaust cutout.
It's like Jake brakes.
Yeah.
These cut windscreens are so great, too.
I know, those really help, don't they?
Stylish, and they work nice.
Well, when you go around a corner, you see how heavy this car is. But it keeps up with traffic. This thing just needs to get out and run once in a while.
Yeah, she's a little gunked up over the years. Hasn't been on a tour, but you know, as you see, it's almost got 40,000 miles on her. She's been around quite a bit over the years. JB drove this car a lot.
Oh yeah. Well, it's great. It's really ahead of its time.
This is one of the cars we refer to as a stump puller, though, in the museum.
Yeah, and it doesn't even have a temperature gauge of any kind, does it? No. 50 about as fast as you'd want to go on this, probably. But in 1923, I think the speed limit was like 25 miles an hour, maybe 30. And this is doing it in the lap of luxury, this thing.
Yeah, well, you were still sharing roads with Model Ts that could barely go 10. Like, we have a really old car. It's actually a Cameron, 1904 Cameron Experimental.
Yeah.
The speedometer goes to 8 miles an hour. It's crazy that Indiana was really the powerhouse in the early days of the automobile.
Oh yeah. Like I said, it rivaled Detroit.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if this is the only one. Hey, if you got a McFarlan, let us know in the notes here underneath. Be curious to know about it. Kind of wonder if the company's still in business.
They really were killing it back in the day, going from carriages and hopped right into automobiles. It did a really good job with it, but I mean, they went bankrupt and then Auburn bought them out.
Right. Well, I think the Depression is what killed them. Nobody's paying. You know, if you bought something like this during the Depression, people threw rocks at you.
Yeah. I'm not sure where most of these resided when they were bought. I'm assuming New York.
Yeah, probably in and around Chicago.
Yeah, the headlights on this thing are built in Chicago. Pretty much an all-around American vehicle. But this one spent a lot of its early life in the Hollywood studios. It's kind of the theme at the museum for us is old Hollywood. And this one, obviously being Fatty Arbuckles, but it also was used in other movies without him.
Have you ever seen a movie with this in it?
Can't find him because, you know, with the scandal and stuff, most of his movies were removed.
Yeah.
We have a list of all the movies that they've been in. Just got to buy some film and a projector, I guess.
Well, it rides wonderfully.
To try it from the back seat.
Yeah, I know.
There's some cars that are still chauffeur-based, like the Phantoms or maybe the Maybachs, but they don't really do it like they used to.
No.
Obviously, having a TV screen in the back's nice, but this is plush. I think if he were to go to a car, this is something that Santa Claus would drive.
I know, it's funny. The engine sounds quieter even now.
Purrs like a kitten.
Let's open that exhaust cutout.
Yeah, let's.
Oh, it does sound like a fire truck.
Oh, that's awesome.
Cameron, thanks for bringing this over. This was a treat. It's one of these cars I've heard about, read about, but never really saw up close. And just to look at the build quality and see how nicely it runs and so expertly restored. You know, a lot of times you get these cars and they overheat in the first 10 minutes and all that kind of stuff. But this thing, man, just runs so nice.
Always a pleasure, Jay. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for having us. Be sure to check out the Nethercutt Museum right up the road in Sylmar, California. Cameron, thank you, my friend.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.